Captain Elena Ramirez felt the subtle whir of the plane's engine beneath her feet as she settled into her first-class seat. The flight attendant had offered her a glass of sparkling water, which now sat untouched on the fold-out tray. Her fingers lightly traced the condensation on the glass as she stared blankly ahead, her mind far from the comfort of plush seats and calm music. She had been through so much in the past 6 months, leading reconnaissance missions in the desert, watching fellow soldiers fall, enduring sandstorms and sleepless nights. The sudden transition back to civilian life felt surreal, almost too quiet. The sharp, familiar voice broke her reflection. "First class, huh?" said the man seated across the aisle, Greg Thornton, she recalled. He hadn't stopped with his sideways comments since boarding. "You know, it's funny. I built my company from the ground up, employed over 300 people. But the airline isn't thanking me with upgrades." Elena said nothing. She had learned long ago that silence was often the strongest armor. But this time, Greg wasn't letting up. "I bet you've never touched a spreadsheet," he added, his voice louder now. A few passengers glanced over. Elena slowly turned her head, looked him directly in the eyes, and with a voice as calm as still water, said, "Sir, I've seen people die for your right to say that." That silenced him, for a moment. The tension in the cabin lingered in the air like static. Passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A flight attendant walked briskly past, whispering to a colleague. Elena picked up her book again, hoping to find refuge in its pages. Suddenly, the plane jolted. The lights flickered once. The aircraft rocked with a sharp, unexpected turbulence that pulled gasps from passengers. Overhead bins rattled, and the fastened seatbelt sign blinked to life with an urgent chime. Elena's military instincts kicked in instantly. She scanned the cabin. Nothing seemed out of place, except the silence from the cockpit. Pilots usually announce turbulence. Where was the voice? Moments later, the intercom buzzed. "If there is any doctor or nurse on board," came the flight attendant's voice, trembling slightly, "please make your way to the front of the aircraft." Gasps. Murmurs. Greg turned toward the aisle, his bravado cracking. "What's going on?" he asked aloud, looking around. A man in a white polo stood, nodded toward the back, and headed forward. Elena watched him go, noting the concern etched in his face. Whatever was happening in the cockpit, it wasn't minor. Elena stood. "Ma'am," she said to the nearest attendant, "can you tell me what's going on?" The woman hesitated. "Aye," she glanced around, then leaned in, voice low. "Both the pilot and the co-pilot, they've lost consciousness. The doctor's in there now, but he thinks they were poisoned. We don't know what to do." Elena blinked. It didn't seem real. Greg overheard and stood up so suddenly his glass of whiskey spilled. "Poisoned," he cried, panicked. "What the hell does that mean? Who's flying this plane?" The attendant tried to calm him, but it was too late. The panic spread like wildfire. Passengers unbuckled, voices rose, a baby began to cry. Elena raised her hand. "Everyone, please stay seated. Stay calm." Greg snapped toward her. "Easy for you to say. You got your fancy seat. Do you even know what happens when nobody's flying a plane? We're going to crash." "Sir, sit down," Elena said firmly, stepping between him and the growing commotion. "Who are you to tell me what to do?" She met his eyes, unwavering. "Captain Elena Ramirez, United States Air Force. I've flown F-35s over enemy territory. I'm trained for emergencies just like this. And right now, I'm the only person on this aircraft with any flight experience." The silence that followed was almost as shocking as the news. The nearby passengers turned to her, expressions shifting from fear to a cautious hope. You're a fighter pilot?" the flight attendant repeated, her eyes wide. Elena nodded. "I've logged over 1,200 hours in combat aircraft. It's not the same as a commercial plane, but the fundamentals are similar. I need access to the cockpit. Now." The attendant didn't hesitate this time. As the cockpit door unlocked, Elena stepped inside. The sight of both pilots slumped against their seats confirmed the urgency. A paramedic crouched near them, checking vitals, shaking his head grimly. Elena sat in the captain's chair, strapped herself in, and immediately assessed the controls. Buttons, dials, screens. The layout was different, but familiar enough. She pressed the radio. "This is Captain Elena Ramirez, United States Air Force. I'm taking control of Flight 476. Both pilots are incapacitated. Request immediate guidance for emergency landing." There was a pause. Then a voice answered. "Captain Ramirez, this is Air Traffic Control LAX. We read you. Thank you for stepping up. We're patching you through to approach now." You'll be receiving heading and altitude coordinates in real time. I'm ready, Elena said, hands on the yoke. Behind her, the flight attendants worked quickly to calm the passengers. When Elena's voice came over the PA system, it was strong and steady. To everyone on board, this is Captain Ramirez. I'm a U.S. Air Force fighter pilot, and I've assumed control of the aircraft. We're in contact with ground control and preparing for a safe landing. Please remain calm, stay seated, and follow all crew instructions. I will get us home. A few scattered claps broke the stillness. Even Greg sank back into his seat, stunned, speechless. The next 30 minutes were tense. Elena followed ATC's commands to the letter, adjusting heading, maintaining altitude, managing thrust. Sweat beaded at her brow, but her hands never trembled. Every ounce of training, every mission she'd flown had led to this. Approach in sight, the controller said finally. Winds light and variable. You're cleared to land. Elena took a deep breath, slowed the aircraft, lowered the landing gear. Her focus narrowed. Then contact. The wheels kissed the tarmac with precision. The plane bounced slightly, then stabilized. Brakes engaged. The aircraft rolled to a gradual stop, perfectly aligned. Silence. Then applause. Loud, joyful, cathartic. The passengers erupted in cheers, some crying, others shouting Elena's name. The crew exchanged tearful hugs. The paramedics rushed in as the emergency lights flashed, tending to the pilots and preparing the cabin for evacuation. Elena unbuckled and stepped out of the cockpit, the weight of the moment settling in her chest. One of the attendants embraced her. You saved us. I just did what had to be done, Elena replied quietly. As the passengers disembarked, many paused to thank her personally. A mother holding a toddler, an elderly man in tears, a teen boy who whispered, "You're a real-life hero." And then Greg. He approached slowly, his face pale, no trace of his earlier arrogance. "Captain Ramirez," he said, voice trembling. I owe you everything. I was wrong, so wrong about you. About people like you." Elena looked at him, reading the sincerity in his expression. She nodded. "We all learned something today, Mr. Thornton." He swallowed and extended a hand. "I hope I can be a better person from this point forward." Elena shook it. "That's all any of us can hope for." Hours later, after answering questions from airport officials and Homeland Security about the suspected poisoning, Elena stood alone near a window, watching emergency crews work around the aircraft. It wasn't how she imagined her return home. But as the sun dipped low behind the runways, painting the sky with gold and violet, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Peace. And maybe, just maybe, hope. Elena stood in silence, her uniform jacket lightly wrinkled, her boots dusted from countless deployments, her gaze locked on the tarmac where the emergency crews moved swiftly around the aircraft. The flashing red and blue lights created a surreal flicker across the scene, making the stillness in her chest feel both cinematic and heavy. She hadn't expected to save lives today. She hadn't expected anything beyond exhaustion and the longing to disappear into the crowd, unrecognized, unnoticed. But fate didn't always wait for readiness. She was greeted next by the lead investigator, Special Agent Marcus Lee of the Department of Homeland Security. He was tall, precise, spoke with a calm cadence, and had the kind of stare that made people forget to lie. "Captain Ramirez?" he asked, gently pulling her from the window with a nod of respect. "We've reviewed the cockpit recordings and spoken to the crew. First off, I want to thank you. What you did up there was nothing short of extraordinary." Elena gave a small nod, her expression unreadable. "We need to debrief you immediately. The pilots are stable but still unconscious, and toxicology reports confirm our fears. Some kind of fast-acting neurotoxin. We're still trying to determine how it got into the cockpit." Elena's jaw tensed. "Any suspects on board?" "That's what we're working on," Marcus said. "No one's been allowed to leave the terminal yet. We're going to conduct a full sweep, passenger manifests, security footage, baggage scans. But I'll be honest, this was well planned. Subtle. Whoever did this knew exactly how to avoid detection." She nodded. "They assumed there'd be no backup pilot. And they certainly didn't expect you." He smiled faintly, then gestured toward a private area set up in the terminal. She followed without a word, her boots echoing on the sterile floor. The room was dimly lit and quiet. A pot of untouched coffee sat on a small table. Her shoulders ached. They spent the next hour going over every detail. Her background, her training, how she noticed something was wrong, how the plane handled. All while the chaos of the investigation unfolded beyond the glass wall. Passengers being interviewed, luggage being inspected, forensics teams walking the length of the plane. And still, even in this maelstrom of protocol and adrenaline, she kept thinking of the faces on that plane. The mother holding her sleeping baby. The elderly woman who had whispered, "Thank you, Angel." The young couple who had clutched each other, tears in their eyes, grateful for another day to be together. Even Greg Thornton, arrogant and loud, had shifted, had cracked open just enough to let gratitude spill through. "Captain," Agent Lee said quietly, pulling her thoughts back, "we'd like you to look over the passenger list. See if anything or anyone stands out." She took the tablet and scrolled slowly, her finger hesitating as she reached the business class section. A name caught her eye, Matthew Ferris. She didn't recognize him, but something tugged at the edge of her memory. "That one," she murmured. "Why?" "I don't know. The name feels familiar. It's probably nothing." Agent Lee made a note anyway. Moments later, a young agent stepped in briskly. "We may have something," she announced, holding up a small plastic bag. This was found under seat 3D business class. "Looks like a syringe cap. Traces of succinylcholine." Lee raised an eyebrow. "Muscle relaxant. Same compound detected in the pilots." "Seat 3D?" Elena asked. The agent nodded. "Assigned to a Matthew Ferris. But the man we have claiming to be Ferris doesn't match the photo on file." Elena stood. "Then whoever he is, he's not just a passenger. We're detaining him now." Lee turned to her, his voice low. "You may want to get some rest, Captain. This just became a federal-level case." "I'm not going anywhere," Elena replied. She spent the next several hours assisting where she could, providing flight details, recounting the exact moment the cockpit went silent, describing the behavior of those around her. She watched through the terminal glass as the false Matthew Ferris was escorted in handcuffs, still calm, still silent. His eyes briefly met hers through the glass, unreadable. That night, as the airport finally began to quiet and the remaining passengers were allowed to leave, Elena sat alone by a charging station with a paper cup of black coffee in her hands. Her phone buzzed with a message from her younger sister. "Are you okay? News says you landed a plane? Call me. Now." She smiled for the first time in hours. She typed back, "I'm okay. I'll explain everything. Just later." As she hit send, she sensed someone approaching. She looked up. It was Greg again, this time without the bravado, without the sharp suit. He wore a simple jacket now, and he looked older somehow. "I know I already thanked you," he said. "But I wanted to say something else." She nodded once, curious. "When I saw you at the gate earlier, I saw the uniform, and I assumed things. That you hadn't worked for what you had. That maybe it was all just symbolic." He paused. "But the truth is, I didn't see you at all. I just saw my own arrogance." Elena didn't interrupt. "I think that's the scariest thing about what happened today. Not just that we almost died, but that I nearly spent my final moments clinging to some small, petty sense of superiority, when I should have just said thank you." She offered a small, tired smile. "People see what they want to see, until life reminds them to look again." Greg exhaled, nodded, and gave her a small bow of his head before walking off into the terminal. At sunrise, Elena was finally cleared to leave. She stepped outside the terminal into the cool morning light, a breeze lifting her hair off her shoulders. A small crowd had gathered, reporters mostly flashing lights, microphones. But she walked past them. No words. No interviews. She wasn't there for fame. She just wanted home. A car was waiting, a courtesy from the airline. As she slid into the back seat and looked at the horizon, a memory flashed in her mind. Her final night in the desert. Sitting atop a sand-swept Humvee under the stars. A fellow pilot beside her, cigarette glowing in the dark. "You know," he had said, "someday it'll all come full circle. And the world will see what you're made of." Back then, she hadn't believed it. But now she knew.